I want to say thank you, RT, for taking the time to discuss this powerful film of 40 Acres. And I'm really interested in exploring. There's so many rich layers to unpack here, and I'm particularly interested in exploring how the themes in the movie are shaped by or reflect a Black perspective. So my first question is to start from a broad perspective. 40 Acres touches on so many fundamental human experiences. You got survival, obedience, the very definition of family. So before we dive into them individually, how, if at all, is this story and this exploration of these themes influenced by a black lens, and what unique perspective or historical context from a Black experience that you bring to this narrative?
Good. That's a great question. Um, yeah, look, I think when you look at the canon of post-apocalyptic, survival stories that we see out there, um, you, you often see it not from our lens. We may be part of that, we might be the sidekick or somebody that helps out or whatnot, but you don't see our community centered. And I wanted to tell a story about how this particular family survives in the future and how it differs from, the family in The Quiet Place or from the people who, roam around in The Walking Dead, who somehow have food to eat, but I don't understand how they do. Anyways, I'm not going to get into it. But so, for me personally, when I talk about Black farmers, having land and in my future, the future is it's famine is widespread. There's no more animals. And so now if you don't know how to work the land, you're in trouble. And if you know how to work the land, you're in trouble because people are coming for your land. And so, yeah, I wanted to make a story that this particular family, not only do they survive with military might, but they survive by preserving their culture, and their culture is integral to how they survive. So, understanding their history. Haley is an archivist. She makes her children read books of revolutionaries in the past, so they can understand who they are and why the land that they're working is important. She tells this story of the history of the land, how their ancestors came up through the Underground Railroad and escaped slavery and were able to get their 40 acres in this land when it was denied by so many others, by the American government in the past. The cultural practices of preserving your art, music, dance are very important to this family, you know what I mean? And it's expressed through different scenes in the film, right? And then also, the agricultural practices, in the film, it's expressed a little bit through the indigenous side of the family, like they have certain remedies to help to treat crops that nobody else in the region know how to do, and which makes them the family that people want help from. But it's all rooted in that sort of cultural preservation that relies on, the ancestors and understanding that ancestral knowledge. And that's how this family really, really survives. And I wanted all that sprinkled in.
Well, you sprinkled it all in, and you touched on probably every question that I have. So yeah, you did. You absolutely did. So if I run out of time, at least you touched on it. When you talk about indigenous, you really do present this powerful bond between the indigenous people and Black folks in the film. Was this connection, this strong alliance, a deliberate design choice, and was it? uh, What does it signify in the context of the story's overall message, particularly from a Black perspective?
Right. So I think, look, I mean, the idea of alliance between, cultural communities, specifically the indigenous and the Black communities, is, it was personified by, I remember a quote by Michael Gray Eyes, who plays Galen. He was in an interview, and I'm going to paraphrase the interview, but the interview kind of asked him, the times are feeling very dark these days, and like, how does the indigenous community think about, surviving in these times? And he said, the indigenous community has survived apocalyptic times. The worst that can be done to our community has been done to our community. And we are so resilient that we have lived past that moment, the moment of erasure. And I feel deeply that the same can be said for Black communities. You know, for 400 years, they attempted to erase us and replace our cultural identity and force us into servitude. So the worst thing that can be done has been done to us already. And the fact that we are here, very present and resilient, it echoed with me, and it made me want to present this family in the future to say that they are the most resilient. They know how to survive. They've been through it. It's in their DNA. Let's put it that way, you know. So the connection was very deliberate because the two communities have been on parallel tracks of resilience and survival, and there's a lot of unknown history of camaraderie between the communities that's just not been shown because who's telling the stories, right? So,
I love that. And man, thank you so much for that answer. I love the fact that was an intentional way in which you approach this. Uh, Probably also intentional. You kind of drop a nugget in this one. Just drop it. You don't even really explore it, and it's something that says something in the movie where it says everything done in the name of God is not God, and you just drop it. Yeah, there's no long discussion or anything like that. So I want to know what were you thinking here?
hmm. Look, faith is a very complex thing, you know what I mean? And I think when I was, creating the character Haley, the lengths that she goes to protect her family, isolating the family in the way that she does, training her children, not just her older children, her younger children, to kill if necessary, and the stuff that I believe that this character has seen. I said this woman has to have a crisis of faith. She has to
Mm.
be going through something, to get to this place. And so I wanted this conversation of faith to be part of the film. And sometimes, religion can take a certain form depending on who is professing it and pushing it. But that is not necessarily God, and I think the relationship to God is something that we all have, and I wanted the expression to be said, that not everything that is done in God's name is is God. You know what I mean?
Well, I caught that. I caught that. I'm just saying, and the fact that you didn't belabor it. You didn't have a long discussion about religion or whatever. You just dropped that. So really, really interesting. And when we talk about religion, trust is part of religion, but it's really important in their religion, this family's religion, about trust.
Mhm.
And what was interesting is that Emmanuel's observation was, hey, mom, I don't know if you understand this, but you kind of need people to have trust. But mom, I'm understanding as a parent, I'm understanding where mom's coming from. She's
Yeah,
like, wait a minute, I've been let down so many times. So what lesson or observation about trust, community, and human relationships were you trying to convey here, especially when you're considering the historical context that you just outlined?
for sure, for sure. Look, I think it's less so that I was trying to convey a certain thing. Look, I love films that make me think, but I don't like films that tell me what to think, And so for me, it was important to show that, like, you can have differences of opinion within the same family. You can have this, but if you're gonna continue to move as a family, you have to come to, a resolve. You have to have these conversations. You have to have these tough things. I'm now a parent as well. When I was writing, I was becoming a parent. And so obviously the film is is me thinking about, what world my son's gonna grow up in. But I think that and you want to protect. And so I'm Team Haley as well. But here's the deal. Team Haley works for a certain period of time. And then there's something that's biological that's going to happen. And this happens in every family. It's universal. That conflict is going to bubble up. And you need to allow the space for that or figure out your own navigation from it. So for me, it was important to show the conflicts of these family, their different point of view, and then now that I got you and you follow them through it, you're going to see them try to figure it out. And ultimately, I suppose what I want people to come away with is if we're going to move forward, whether it be as a family or a community, we have to we have to connect. We have to allow for trust. Sometimes it's right, sometimes it's wrong, but that's life. And I think that was a very important thing that I wanted people to come away with.
Yeah, and I'm trying to stay away from any spoilers here, so that's why my questions are just general. Uh, but I want to go back a little bit as a parent. I'm just telling you, I identify with Haley's unwavering commitment to keeping her family alive. Even as Emmanuel was like, he's like, I gotta do my thing. I need an individual path or whatever. I'm like, shut up, boy. Do what I need you to do. I mean, from a black family, that's how a lot of times that we are. We like, do what I say. Talk a little bit more about that conflict, or I mean, was this a lesson that you were trying about growing up, about the reality of needing to find your own way while still being connected to family?
Yeah, look, it's semi-autobiographical. Not to say, listen, Mom, I'm not calling you a military killer. You know what I'm saying? Let me just get that. Let me just get that out. But look. I mean, the relationship at the core, mother and son. That's me and my mom. And my mother raised me and my brother. Virtually by herself. And really taught us a lot about the world, how we had to move through it, what her experiences shaped how she thought about the world and what we had to do to move. And so yeah, we ran into these conflicts. And I think, in the film, I'm never trying to say that anybody's right or wrong. I mean, I really think that Haley is generally right, you know what I mean, across the board. But like I said before, there's biologically there's something happening. And no matter what you do as a parent, how much you try to shelter your kids or keep them safe, um, there's a need for them to try to figure it out on their own. And if you don't recognize that need, and you don't allow it to happen, it's gonna happen some way, shape, or form.
But
So
but see the way you make me mad though is that Emmanuel's about to make my help possibly could be demise of the family. Oh, I got this. Let me try to do what I got to do. Anyway, that's a
You
debate.
act like you act like you never been young, and like you didn't push back against you, or you didn't stay out too late or go somewhere you shouldn't have gone to. When you're young, you don't understand the context of these things, and so these characters, and look, he's a young man. You got to understand, he's a young man. He's been on that farm for, coming up 17 years or something like that. He hasn't seen another woman who's not his sisters. Look, bro, you got to remember what it used to be.
I feel no, I feel that. I feel that. You also show that survival demand, and you say it in the film. Survival demands immense work, but simultaneously, you suggest that people will go to the not suggest. You actually have it said in the film that people will go to extreme lengths to survive. Can you elaborate on this duality? It takes this hard work, but at one point in time, it was like, hey, Haley, you just like us.
Yeah,
What
right.
you doing is just like us.
Right, right. Look, I think the thing is when we're talking about the film, the circumstances in the film is yeah, sometimes there's a reason to shoot somebody in the head. And it depends on the context of the situation, right? It's in one circumstance, that's wrong. It shouldn't be done. In another circumstance, it's totally justifiable. I'm very interested in the duality of those things. Obviously the film is a big old conversation. It's about survival and what you do and the lengths you go to, and sometimes that could be the wrong thing to do, and sometimes it's absolutely the right thing to do. And yes, there's all types of perspectives that can be thrown around in that conversation. And somebody throws that to Haley, but you see how Haley responds to that. She ain't having that conversation, not with this man. You know what I'm saying? So, and then there are some conversations that she will have a conversation about. She will talk to her son, about certain things. So it just depends on what it is. And I think ultimately, I like films that present these ideas for you to understand through these characters and then let you think about them, you know?
Well, you did that. And talking about your characters, particularly talking about your actors, can you just talk a little bit about your cast?
I mean, obviously,
And let me say this, particularly, how did they bring the authenticity of this family to life so well? Because I felt that family, even though I'm not in an apocalyptic time.
right. Yeah, I look, it was a heavy challenge to them. I'm not gonna lie, and you see the way the film is. I didn't want it. I wanted it to be very grounded. I didn't want it to be like, oh, they're having fun killing everybody and it's all fun. Like I wanted to be real. I wanted you to feel the earth under their feet and feel the weight of the decisions that they're making. And it's a big challenge, but when you got uh, you know, Danielle Deadwyler she's a generational talent. What Denzel just said about her, he said she's one of one. You know what I mean? So, that's Denzel saying that. So, she brought a gravity to Haley. She brought a beautiful a discipline to Haley, a hard texture to Haley, but then this beautiful, soft, loving. You can see everything she does is truly out of love. You can connect with her. Her presence was just incredible. Michael Gray Eyes brought, he's the yin to her yang. He tough as nails, but he has a warmth and a humor to himself that really sort of, balances her out. And then a lot of the young actors, led by Katame, who plays Manny. Manny is a different form of masculinity, one that he can take care of business and he's from the farm, but also there's a naivete that he had, that I hope that audiences kind of feel like, yeah, I understand this. I'm mad at this kid, but I understand him, you know what I mean? And then Lena Robinson as Rain and Jada and Hailey as the two younger sisters. It was beautiful to see them come together. Danielle and Michael really sort of brought them and grounded them, and then they brought their own energy. Some of those that Hailey it was her first film, and so she has no reference for this acting stuff. So she's coming with this energy that's just very pure. And I'm sure it caught Danielle and Michael off guard, you know what I mean, responding to her. So it was a beautiful thing to see them, come together the way they did.
Well, great. I have to wrap it up. So my last question to you is, why did you call this film 40 Acres?
Well, I mean, look, we're going to talk about, like I said, we're going to talk about Black farmers. And when you're talking about that, then for me, the legacy of land is an important thing to talk about. And so I knew that I wanted to make reference to the unbroken promise, obviously, to give formerly enslaved Black people land to which were to build legacy, and it was broken. So it pays tribute to that and to the ones that came up through the Underground Railroad and actually landed in Canada where they were able to get their 40 acres. And that's the history of the family, the Freeman family in this film. So that was the reason that, I felt very important that the film had to be historically tied, but that it was its own story in the future, a story of this family now having the resilience to have survived this long. And they're the ones that are out there kicking ass, and that everybody else is coming to them for help. So, yeah.
Well, RT, firstly, it's just a pleasure, man. Thank you so much. You did make a film that made me think, and it's one that'll have people having some discussions. So thank you so much, man. I appreciate your time, and thank you for this piece of work.
Thank you, Reggie. I appreciate you, brother.
All right.